Hi there, today in this video we are learning how to factorize the quadratic expressions. So the general form to factorize the quadratic expression is ax squared plus bx plus c, where a cannot be equal to 0. The reason of saying a cannot be equal to 0 because otherwise this quadratic expression will change into the linear form. Here in this video, we are looking to all the examples where we have got the quadratic expression with a equals 1. So all the examples that you will be seeing after would be in the form of x squared plus bx plus c, which means that a is 1. I'm going to show you with the first one. So the first example is x squared plus 8x plus 7. And clearly here we can see that a is 1. So this is our first case. Now, whenever we have having x squared with the constant 1, then the factorization of that would be end up in a two brackets form with the x written here and the x written here as well. The other two numbers we're going to decide after simplifying it. So what we're going to do is whatever the first term constant and the last term constant, you multiply them together first of all. What do I see? The two numbers I'm having for the first term and the last term is 1 times plus 7, and that gives just 7. When I say just 7, it means is a positive 7. Now, we are looking for all the factors of 7. So 1 and 7, so 1 times 7 is make 7. To make these numbers, you need to see that the number 1 and 7, would you be able to make 8? So we need to think of the sign that the sum of them would be equals to 8. I'm going to write down here. So that's what we are making. So this is the first example. This is plus 1 and this is plus 7. So clearly when I add them together, I would get plus 8. Is that what we are looking? Yes. So basically in this sort of factorization, we are looking for the product of the first and the last term. Whatever you get the product of the first and the last term, then you need to see that the sum of them should be making your middle term. So here we have got the middle term 8, but using these numbers, we try to make it by using any signs, either positive or negative, to make plus 8. With this one, we have used plus 1 and plus 7. As I said that this factorization would be in a two brackets form with the x written in both the brackets. And the two numbers that we have got is a plus 1, which I'm going to write down with the first bracket. And the other number we are getting is a plus 7, which I'll be writing it down with the next bracket. Another way to check the answer, there's a way to check the answer is when you expand these brackets, you should get the original thing back. I'm going to show you the first example with the checking as well. So to check this, you need to expand out the brackets. So in my previous video, I've explained how to expand the double brackets. So you times the first with the first term. When you multiply them together, so x times x would make x squared. Then you do the first with the second term. So x times 7 would be 7x. Then you do the second term with the first term, would make 1x. And then the second term with the second term. So 1 times 7 would make 7. You can do the simplification with the middle term, so which is plus 7x plus 1x, and it would give you plus 8x plus 7. So this is, we are going back to the original question. So this means that whatever we have got the two brackets of the factorization is right, because when we expand it, we are going back to the same question. I'm going to show you with the next example now. Having the next example is x squared plus 15x plus 50. As I said, whatever the numbers we are having with the first and the last term, we're going to multiply them together. Because there's no number here, which means is a 1. So you do 1 times 50 would be 50. Okay. Once you would have 1 times 50 would be 50. Now you try to find out the multiples of 50 that when you add them together would give you plus 15, which is your middle term. So you need to keep plus 15 in your mind. So I'm just going to circle it so you would remember. First, I'm going to find out the multiples of 50. So I'm going to start with 5 times 10 makes 50. then we see these two numbers and 5 and 10. But using these numbers, can I get the middle term, which is plus 15? So what I'm trying to get is now, I'm trying to get plus 15, but using a number 5 and 10. Because you're looking for plus 15, so you do plus 5 and plus 10 would give you plus 15. So it works with your numbers. With this sort of factorization, we write down the two brackets. The first is the x here and another x will be here. Now I'm going to check my answer to see that what I'm choosing the numbers are right or not. So when I multiply these two numbers, I should get the product, which is 50. And when I add these two numbers, I should get the middle term, which is plus 15. So the middle term must give you the sum. The last term must give you the product of those two numbers. So if I've taken plus 5 and plus 10, that gives me a sum of 15, which we are looking for. So it's fine. When I multiply plus 5 times plus 10, it would give me plus 50. So plus 5 times plus 10 gives us plus 50, which is the last term. We're going to write down the numbers now, the other two numbers inside the bracket, which is plus 5 and plus 10. Going on to the third example. So we are having x squared minus 7x plus 12. I'm going to begin with the same thing. So whatever the first and the last term, we're going to multiply them together. So this is 1 times 12 would be 12. We're going to find out the multiples of 12. So I'm going to write down the first one, which is 2 and 6. 2 times 6 makes 12. But using the number 2 and 6, we cannot get a number minus 7 because 2 plus 6 would make 8. 2 minus 6 would make minus 4. So in either way, if I either using the plus sign or the minus sign, I'll not be getting a number minus 7. What we are trying to make now is, we are trying to make the two numbers which give us the sum of minus 7. So 2 and 6 didn't work. I'm going to check any other multiples, but using any signs with them would give us minus 7. So the other multiples of 12 is 4 times 3 is 12. So now if I'm going to use 4 times 3 is making 12, which is verifying my last term, but I still need to check, does it makes, when I add them together, would it give me minus 7? So you do minus 4 and minus 3. So minus 4 and minus 3 gives minus 7. It means this is the product I'm getting and this is the sum I'm getting. So the multiplication of the two numbers is giving me the last term, which is plus 12. The sum of the two numbers is giving me the middle term, which is minus 4 minus 3. I'm going to do the same thing to write down the final step in two brackets form. So this would be my x and this would be my x. To write it down in the factorized form, so the two numbers we get is minus 4 and minus 3. Now I'm going to discuss how you can even check. So using these two numbers, what you have got here, minus 4 and minus 3, when you write them down, minus 4 and minus 3, it should give you the middle term when you add them together. So we are getting the middle term. When we multiply these numbers, which is minus 4 times minus 3, we should get the product would be the last term. So we know that negative and negative makes a positive. 4 times 3 is a 12. So we are getting the product, which is a last term. Going to the next example now, which is the fourth one. And here we're going to see the similar example what we have done in the example 3. So having x squared minus 11x plus 24. I'm going to again start with the same thing by multiplying the first and the last term together. So 1 times 24 makes 24. I'm going to see the multiples of 24. So I'm going to start with 2 times 12 makes 24. But by using the number 2 and 12, there's no way I can get the middle term, which is minus 11. I'm going to get and try for some other multiples of 24. So we can get 24 in a 3 times table. So which is 3 times 8 is 24. Now, by using a number 3 and 8, there is a possibility of getting a number minus 11. So if I put minus 3 and minus 8, it would give me minus 11, which is giving me the middle term. So I'm looking for the two numbers. When I sum them, it would give me the middle term. When I product them, it would give me the last term. So I'm going to try to product them as well. So minus 3, if I write down minus 3 times minus 8, so the two negatives makes a positive, and 3 times 8 makes 24. So these two numbers does work with my factorization because the sum is giving me the middle term and the product is giving me the last term. I'm going to write it down this in the two brackets form now. So I would have the first two variables would be x and x in here. The other two, which I've picked up the number, is a minus 3 and minus 8. Now, here's the next example, which is example number 5. And to go with the example number 5, we are having x squared minus 6x minus 16. I'm going to do the same thing that I'm going to start by multiplying the first and the last term together. So now this time we are having a last term as a negative number. So 1 times minus 16. When you do the product with 1 times minus 16, you'll come out with minus 16. Now you're going to factorize or you find out the multiples of minus 16. And what we need to consider that we are choosing the two numbers. When we add them together, we must be getting the middle term, which is minus 6. I'm going to start with the first multiples. So with the 2 times table. So 2 times 8 is 16. Now, I can see that because I have to make minus 16, it means one of the term needs to be negative. We need to think is whether we are taking 2 to be negative or 8 to be negative. So I'm going to go back and see that what I'm trying to get is a minus 6. So if I do 2 minus 2, if I do on the side minus 2, so the two options I'm having is I can do minus 2 plus 8 or I can do 2 minus 8. I'm going to find out the answers of both of them and see that which one is giving me the middle term, which is minus 6. So if I do minus 2 plus 8, it would give me a positive 6. If I do 2 minus 8, it would give me a negative 6. Because I'll be looking for the negative 6, so I'm going to take this one, but I'm going to ignore the first one. So it means that the number we are choosing would be plus 2 and minus 8. When you multiply them together, you would get a multiplication of minus 16. And when you add them together, you will get the middle term, which is minus 6. We're going to check with these numbers now. So when I multiply these two numbers, which is plus 2 times minus 8, we should get the last term. So positive and negative makes a negative here. 2 times 8 is a 16. So I am getting the last term. When I do the sum of these numbers, which is plus 2 and minus 8, we must get the middle term. So plus 2 and minus 8 gives minus 6, which is the middle term. So it satisfied my last term, these numbers, and these numbers satisfied the middle term as well, which means that when I'm going to write down the two brackets with the variables x and x in here, the two numbers we'll be having is a plus 2 and minus 8. Now, looking to the example 6 would be x squared minus x minus 56. So I'm going to write it down here, x squared minus x minus 56. Now, this time I'm having the first term variable is a 1 and the second term variable is a 1 as well. But it's not going to change anything in my working out. So I'm going to write it down. This is a 1 and this is a 1, but it's not going to change anything in the working out. The method remains the same. I'm going to start by multiplying the first and the last term together. So 1 times minus 56 would be minus 56. Because we are getting a product is a negative number, it means the two numbers which are going to choose. So one must be positive and one must be negative to get the product to be a negative number. So now I'm going to find out the multiples of 56, but I need to keep the middle term in my mind, which is minus 1. So when I do the sum of those numbers, I must get minus 1 there. So there's so many possibilities you could have, but I'm going to go with the one which is 8 times 7 makes 56. The reason for me to be choosing these multiples is so I'll be able to get my middle term, which is minus 1. Now, I've got the numbers, but because we are trying to get minus 56, which clearly shows that one of the numbers should be positive where the other one needs to be the negative. I'm going to write down the numbers on the side. So I'm having a number 8 and 7, and what I'm trying to get is a -1 from them. So I'm going to try with +8 and -7. Then I'm going to use another combination, which is going to be with the numbers 8 and 7. I'm trying to get -1. The other possibility of having a sign is -7 and +8. So let's going to see that which one is right and which one is wrong. So if you do +8 -7, you will get +1. But what we are looking for is a -1. So the first one didn't work. But if you do -8 + 7, that give us a sum of -1, which we are looking for. So these are the two numbers which we should be using. So the product would be -56. So I'm going to choose the numbers -8 and +7. And now I'm going to check is the product would be -56 and the sum should be -1. To begin with the product now, so I'm going to do -8 times +7. Positive and negatives makes a negative. 8 times 7 is 56. This is making the last term. Now I'm going to try with the sum as well. So -8 + 7 gives -1, which is the middle term. Because it satisfies both my last term and the middle term, now I'm going to do the last step, which I have to write them down in a two brackets form. And with the x and the x variable here, the two numbers we have chosen is a -8 and +7. It's not going to make any difference if you write it down in the order of x + 7 and x - 8. It still would be the same thing, because when you expand x - 8 and x + 7, or you expand x + 7 and x - 8, you would get the same thing. So both of them would, when you expand them, you will come out with x² - x - 56. Now I'm going to show you, because whatever we have been doing, the x² variable is a +1. I'm going to show you one last example where the x² variable is not a +1, but instead it's a -1. So looking to the last example of this quadratic factorization, which is a -x² plus 18x minus 72. So it's similar to what we are having before, that the variable of the x² is a 1 here. But the difference is that now we're having a -1 instead of +1. What we're going to do, the first thing is, before we do the factorization and repeat what we have been doing, we try to make it written in the form where we should be able to get a +1. This could be only be possible if I factorize minus outside the bracket. To factorize minus outside the bracket, it means whatever the signs inside with all the terms would change. So this would be now x² minus 18x, and this would be plus 72. So whenever we factorize the negative sign with the first variable, then all the other sign would change. So this one was the negative, now is positive. This negative changes to, this positive changes to negative, and this negative changes to positive. When you expand out the bracket, you must get the same thing again. So minus times by x² would be minus x². Negative and negative makes a positive with 18x. And negative and positive makes a negative of 72. Once we get to the stage where again we are having the x² coefficient to be positive, we'll repeat the same thing. So I'm going to multiply the first and the last term together. So 1 times 72 would be 72. Now we're going to find out the multiples of 72, but what we need to keep in our mind that the middle term is a minus 18. Always look to the middle term and see that what you are trying to show with the sum of the two numbers. So starting with the multiples of 72, there could be a number of the multiples you could have with the 72. You could have 72 in a 2 times table, and you could have in a many other times table as well. But because I have to make is a minus 18, then I'm going to take a number. I know that 6 times 12 makes 72. This is a plus 72 we are making. So we're going to see that what's the middle term is a minus 18. It means if I do plus 6 and plus 12, it would give me plus 18. And what I'll be getting for the middle, what I'm looking for the middle term to be a negative. So I cannot take the plus and the plus here. Instead, we take minus 6 and minus 12 because these two numbers would give us a minus 18. Now I'm going to check these two numbers. So if I do the product of minus 16 and minus 12, Negative and negative makes a positive, and 6 times 12 is 72. So we get the last term. The product gives us the last term. Now we're going to have a look to the sum. So when I do the sum of these numbers, which is minus 6 plus, and then minus 12, which is positive and negative makes a negative 12, and you would get minus 18, which is the middle term. So these two numbers are actually giving us the product and the sum. So it verifies that this is the right numbers to be chosen for the factorization. The last step is to write them down in a bracket form, which is x and x. But remember, we have got this negative sign outside the bracket, which will continue. We're going to write down this negative sign and the two brackets. The number that we have got is minus 6 and minus 12. So this is factorization, quadratic factorization, which is the type 1. And in my later videos, I'm going to explain you what happens or how you do the quadratic factorization if the x square constant is not 1, but it could be any other number.